Hey everyone, RJ here with National Trash Valet. Just wanted to go over the topic today of determining your valet trash service costs. Three tips. So there's a whole bunch that kind of goes into determining what your valet trash service cost is going to be. But overall, here's a couple of tips that you can kind of take into account when you're, looking at the revenue projector that we provide, where you can kind of go in and play with some numbers on if you charge this, you could receive this back, and kind of how to come to that price point. So, tip number one: when size and layout matters of the complex. Now, this can definitely go into pricing right away when you come to a complex. Take a drive through a community. Just it really helps determine how much to charge for the valet trash services because there's a lot of things that can go into one complex. Right? Is it one level, two levels, three levels, indoor, outdoor? Is it just stairs? Can you use the elevator? There's a whole bunch of things that kind of go into determining how quickly you can get through the complex servicing and valet size. So if the size of the community is large, how long will it take you to service, right? Is it 100 units or is it 600 units? When you get to that 400, 500 unit complex size, that starts to become a handful for a single valet. 500 units and above. Now you're maybe kind of looking at two valets, or at least two valets to work the shift coming back on Sunday, since your trash pickup is really heavy after coming off 2 nights off. Um, so really, what you want to do is keep in mind that on average, it takes 1 hour to service 100 doors on a regular flow trash night, right? So you come back from 2 nights off, your first night back on Sunday, it's going to take you almost a full hour per 100 doors to service. But then as Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday happen, you're already there on site. That heavy day is out of the way. It's going to take less time to service those doors, maybe even half time, depending on how quick your valet is and how good your valet is with the community. So you need to take that into account of hours worked on the property and how difficult it will be if there's multiple floors and things like that. Exactly how many valets will you need per shift? Do you need just one? Do you need two? If it's taking you two the entire week because it's a 700 unit apartment complex, that's something to take into account because what you really should be doing with any business is yes, up front, I strongly suggest you work all aspects of your business, and then when you get to a point, you start to filter yourself out. So instead of becoming an employee, you become then a manager, and then you become an owner where it's less hands on and things are kind of working for itself. But to do that, you need to have a true understanding of what's needed per site, and having multiple valets on and saying, if I was totally off this property, how can it turn a profit without me being on it? So you need to kind of work a budget backwards from that aspect of going, I'm not here. We're paying full price for valets for all this stuff. What's the minimum that I need to start charging to be able to turn a profit? Is the layout of the complex difficult to navigate? Is it garden style? Is it, like I was saying, high rise where maybe there's indoor and there's trash chutes on each floor and it's pretty quick to kind of move through everything? Um, that can definitely play a role into it because you in that if it's high rise internal, you could maybe use a cart and just navigate between each floor pretty easily. How many stories is the complex? Are doorsteps located outside or inside the buildings? Like I said, with that, that's just more just trying to manage. Do you do an over the shoulder bag or a cart or things like that? Because if it's an over the shoulder bag and an outside, the door access is outside, you can kind of move fairly swiftly. If you have a cart, it might be a little bit more cumbersome depending on the sizing of the hallways to kind of move between and then go between trash chutes, right? So you can kind of get an idea if you do the walkthrough originally or the drive through before like a meeting. You can kind of get an idea of where some best spots will be to start, but until you actually have the contract and have a physical body on there that moves throughout the complex nightly, then you'll have a really good understanding, and definitely how far away the dumpsters are located from the units. So take that into account when you're kind of starting to map out, like, hey, what am I charging per door and what are they going to get back on their rate? Like I said, we do have the free revenue calculator. That's something you can download and you can kind of play with the projections that we have and what you think that you could get from a complex because each complex is different. You could charge low on something that you just want to get your foot in on the door and partner with right away because maybe they have a lot of complexes and you can see yourself growing with them, or maybe they're an ultra luxury high end and you're like, if they're already charging 3,200 in rent, this is something that they would be adding on and charging additional for, so we can charge a higher fee because we'd want to make sure that the service is extremely top notch here as an amenity for them, sales tool, and also, something that we can grow with them as a complex. Tip number two: apartment complex grading. So most apartment complexes are graded depending on some companies. There's some companies out there that have data where they go around and they have people that do call-ins and just surveys and things like that in apartment complexes. One, for instance, is apartmentdata.com. They have a variation of access to data. Can get, depending on your budget, it might not fit up front, but it's something I would definitely say to take a look at as your company grows and you have some additional expenditures that you can kind of put towards your marketing and just lead gen. Apartment data is one that I'm just referencing here. There are a few others around, but it's not in every state. So just be wary of that. Just because you're in a certain state, it may not have access to that data yet, or there just might not be enough growth for the company to reach that area to give you the data you want. But what they do, and other third party companies like them, is they actually will, like I said, do surveying of all the properties and property management companies and things like that in the area, and they will grade them from A to D. And what you want to do if you use a data resource like this um, is, since the grading is broken down in levels from A to D based on location, demographic, structure, rent, all that kind of thing, you're able to really pick out, cherry pick up front ones that would be A's and B's that would really be good for your service. And then you can use them, to go after with your marketing tools. And then from there, you can look at some C properties start to kind of get, they could be useful, but depending on the area and demographics, it might not fit what you're trying to charge back for. And then you can create your own grading scale based on your valet trash businesses and services you offer, right? So even if you don't have access to apartment data, you could definitely, as you go through and see the complex, meet the property manager, you could give it your own, grading system, A through D, or whatever it might be, and just say, this is luxury, or this is mid-level college. It might work, in this case scenario. So then that way, when you can easily reference it later, through a Google sheet or a spreadsheet that you provide. You can kind of filter by those grades as you bring on, a sales agent or someone else to help you. As, like I said, you take yourself out of the business, because the end goal is to create something that you can run, manage, make profit on, and take yourself out of the business at some point, so that you're not having to service, the trash yourself or the sales, and you become more high level and just management to, forward thinking and structure of the company. Tip number three: multiple complexes, one management company. Now, this tip, I love this tip. This is amazing, along with all the others. But with this one, if you're fortunate enough to discuss negotiations with a management company that runs multiple complex locations, be prepared with a quote that gives a reduction in cost. Now, you might be thinking this is kind of crazy. Like, my service, rate is service. Like, hey, if they're going to offer $32, to the resident, maybe I want to split that in half, or can I get 18 or 19 or whatever the per door rate might be, that you think that you could charge them effectively. But in this case, you can use this as a marketing and sales tool when you speak with them, because if partnering with a company such as this is part of your business plan, be sure to use a proposal unique to that type of contract. So essentially, if you come across a property management company that's kind of in that sweet spot of like 3 to 8 complexes, and they don't have trash service yet, but they're all managed by the same company, and they're willing to bring you on to one, you can easily say, hey, I can charge you this one price point for this one, or we can negotiate where I can come into all of them, not necessarily at the same time. We can spread it out. Every 3 months, we bring on a new one of your new apartment complexes, or every 6 months, whatever they feel comfortable with. But as we bring them on, we will reduce the overall rate, by a quarter or 50 cents per door. Nothing too, crazy that it really ties your hands up, with, once again, taking yourself out of the business and being able to pay valets and everything like that. But at the same time, they like it because it gives them a reduction in cost. But at the same time, what you want quantity. So, the goal is to get to 1,000 doors, and then 2,000 doors, and 5,000, and 10,000, and things like that. Because at one point, if you're hitting 10,000 doors a month, and you're churning out um, thousands of dollars in additional revenue because of one um, management company that you connected with that had multiple properties that could get you there quicker. That's really the route to go. So keep that in mind as you have discussions with a property manager, and then maybe the regional vice president, if that's their decision maker, or if it needs to go up the chain one further. Always find ways to sweeten the pot to them that also doesn't really hamper you and your growth. So you have to make sure that it works for you. That's why when you come in at price point, coming in a little bit high and asking your leading questions and getting an idea of where they sit on price really can benefit you as you try to grow your business, especially with one company, because all it really takes is getting in with one property management company that's willing to expand you to, two or three or four of their complexes, and they're each 300 units. And next thing you know, you're billing out 1,200 units within the first, 6 months or 7 months of coming on with them. So, final takeaways for these, before you decide how much to charge a complex, take an on-site tour, and also take a look at our website, nationaltrashvalet.com, and the free revenue generator that we have. That download tool essentially is a Google Sheet, and you can kind of um, prepare it how you want. You get to put in your per door rate, and then you get to put in how many doors that complex is, and it kind of gives you an idea of what your revenue generated from it would be. uh, Building layouts, structure, size, locations make a difference in how you charge the service. Because if you think it's going to take longer to be there because it's a 700 unit apartment complex and you need two valets, you need to really think about that and add that into your expenses when you go to present price point to them. And you can even bring that up. Hey, now instead of just one, we'll have two here, and it's more bodies on site and whatever it might be that you can use to sell your services. Grade the complex as part of your cost process. So, like I said, whether you do this yourself on your own sheet, or if you have the additional money for marketing and you want to use a third party company like Apartment Data, or like I said, another company that might be in your local area, um, that does this for you, that's great because it's a quicker tool to assess and be able to, uh, find apartments that work within your service fee. And then a company that manages multiple complex locations may need a special type of contract, not necessarily a special type of contract, but just a special type of price point for their contract, which offers them a little bit of discounted rate every time they bring complex on. But do not go below. Once again, you have to kind of work backwards and figure out what your final price point is, and don't go below it, because if they're at 8 communities and they're like, "Hey, we want to bring you in at all 8," and you need to reduce now $1, and you're like, that doesn't really work. I could max do 50 cents a door, and I could cap you, and we could drop it 10 cents per door over the first 5 complexes, and then when we get to that fifth, it maintains at that 50-cent rate off that you have, and we'll just use that for rates going forward. So these are all options to kind of think about as you approach apartment complexes, and especially the management companies that you'll be working with and selling to. um, yeah. So go ahead and implement these into your business and your sales cycle. And thanks for tuning in.